Okay, so first up on the show is Nef Torres, the founder and CEO of People First Employment, a full-service staffing provider that services the manufacturing, distribution, and call center industries. Nef, I'm excited to have you here. We met at a networking event and our networking lunch, and you've got great energy, super positive. So it's kind of a no-brainer to ask you to come on the show. And I love the idea of staffing. You do more staffing like in-person staffing, you know what I mean, boots on the ground. I do it more on the virtual side, so we've got a lot in common. Right. So how did you get involved in the staffing world?
Well, truthfully, it was kind of a natural path for me. My sisters were both involved in recruitment at the time, and I had been doing sales and just kind of working at local restaurants and meeting a ton of people. And I saw the need that even that ownership had for consistent employees to be in their building. If not, their business just didn't function. So listening to my sisters come home from work and talk about their day and then being able to see that, from a functionality standpoint, I really felt like, oh, this is great. But I didn't think I was going to get into it. I was actually doing some banking. I was with Wells Fargo and Chase. And a good friend of mine said, hey, I really think you'd be good at this. And, I took a stab at it. I left everything that I was building over at Wells Fargo to come over and give this a shot. And I fell in love with the purpose behind staffing an organization, right? Not necessarily the organization that I had gone to work for, because, it becomes a mill in certain entry level points for a business, right? But when you really start to break down what it means to help an organization find great employees that move their business forward, you also have to look at the flip side and see what it does for that individual to be able to put food on their table. So my first experience in staffing really allowed for me to find passion in what I was doing. And I had tried a few different avenues, different work platforms, and I just didn't feel like that same level of passion. I could make money in it, right? Because I felt like I could sell anything, right? But in reality, I didn't feel like I was solving an issue that was near and dear to my heart, and staffing gave me that. So as soon as I came in, I had an immediate impact, some success, and followed with some adversity in my personal life, it was a career path that I never wanted to get away from. Even though life took me away from it, I just kind of hopped back into it, right? And so I'm here 16 years in, going on my 17th year now, and I feel like I'm in a space where, my business is benefiting from, me staying in the pocket and learning everything that I can and trying to stay ahead of that learning curve that is our ever-changing world within staffing, right? So,
wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love that you found your passion. You never work a day if you love what you do or whatever, which sometimes that's not quite true.
Right.
But one of the first things you said was consistent staffing. And if we want to just jump into the meat and potatoes of like everyone's biggest question is, you're a staffing company. One of the biggest problems we hear nowadays is I cannot get people to show up. What do you do to mitigate that?
Right. Well, there are many different levels to that question, right? Because an organization that says, for every organization that says that they can't find good staff and good employees, there's another organization that says we're doing just fine, right? And so when you start to break down what each organization is doing, you begin to see some of the inconsistencies of those that are having trouble, right? And so whether that be from a cultural standpoint or an alignment with the market and pay, there are definitely some layers to why an organization might not be doing well. And I think post-COVID, individuals are looking for something different. It's got to be a deeper meaning. If I'm going to leave my family for 40 hours a week and I'm going to go work somewhere, there has to be purpose. There has to be growth outside of my monetary compensation. There has to be an intellectual compensation also, right? Because this may not be the last place I come to work. So organizations that are doing really well in this pocket right now, they're finding success in investing in their core group of associates and having that ecosystem feed all the new associates that are coming through that door. So they tend to see a better retention. They tend to see a happier workforce. Subcultures get built within that organization, and it becomes this real community, right? And so there's definitely room for improvement when an organization says, I just can't find staff. Well, I see a ton of people walk through my office every day looking for work. They're just looking for the right place to work, right? And so how do we create that?
So that's really incumbent upon employers to focus on creating an atmosphere within their organization that is positive and that is nurturing and it is intellectually challenging, allows them to grow in whatever path that they're looking to grow in. And then this subculture too, you know what I mean? We talked about this offline where we talked about the creating a hub that is strong and, and that can resist, you know, the virus, the bad employee that maybe works their way in, but they can't penetrate that core, and then they'll go on about their way, but that core stays tight.
That's exactly it.
I think having that buy-in to the mission of the company too. No longer are we in the days where employees are just fine with being a cog in the wheel, right? A cog in the wheel for $7.50 an hour, where they don't really know why they're doing it every day. They want to buy into something bigger too. We all went through COVID. We all went through, you know, being at home with our families and having to reevaluate what our world looked like. So how can companies create that vision that everyone can buy into and give them a path to success? What would your take be on that? Because you come from it from the employee's perspective. How do you coach businesses to be the place that employees want to land?
Right. I would say it starts with senior leadership. If senior leadership is plugged into the mission and it's being talked about and it's being referenced on a daily, weekly basis, staff meetings, opportunities where you can really hone in on the purpose of the organization, then you'll begin to see that be an infectious energy amongst the organization, the production. You see numbers get better. You see people happier. You see less people calling in, right? And the ecosystem, as Marc was talking about, begins to protect itself. It creates an environment where someone who is not driven to see that mission through is just unable to really survive within that space, right? And you know, individuals want to know that the organization that they're putting all this effort into has a future, right? Because everything, we see it all too often right now where organizations become obsolete. They're not making the proper advancements within their field or their vertical in order to survive the next 10 to 15 years. So as an individual, if I'm looking for work, I'm going to break down whether this type of work is going to be around the next 5 to 10 years, right? And so how do you get to a space where you're having that dialogue or you're creating different avenues within your operation in order to feed that next space that you're going to be breaking into? And that's hard to do. I mean, really, when I talk to my clients, there's some things that are going on within their workspace that they have no control over, right? Or that are difficult for them to pivot from because that's their bread and butter. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that it will be there in the next 5 to 10 years. And, you know, I hear this all the time. Well, we just don't have the time to invest in. And the minute that you say that to me, then it shows me that your long-term thinking isn't necessarily aligned with, you know, what you're trying to accomplish in your objectives, right? Your objectives are nearsighted. And so it's definitely a dynamic that you begin to break down as you're really doing a temperature check on the organization, trying to find pain points and really identifying what their vision is for the next 5 to 10 years. Because another thing that organizations aren't really taking into account are that there are older generations that are moving out of the workforce. And you got your millennials, right, which I happen to be a part of. And then you have your Gen X or your Gen Z. Gen Z. And
wild.
Their wants and needs are different. A ton of value in that space, though.
Yeah.
A ton of value with those individuals because they grew up with technology in their hand, right? And so how can you create a space for them within your organization that not only fulfills you filling a seat and getting a task done, but really propels your business to that next stage, right? And so if I'm going to go into the future, I need minds of the future to be attached to that. So if I can really work to figure out what drives an individual, then now I can create a game plan around their success within a roadmap, right? Within their success within our organization. And so
super important to be able to lead.
Right.
So your leadership has to be able to then lead these particular pockets of generations that are coming through, keep them inspired to do the things that they need to do and to continue learning.
Right.
But let's talk about what is staffing. What are the advantages of using a staffing company like yours?
Mine in particular is you get me, right? I'm going to come in and break it down. I'm going to have a tough conversation with you around your deficiencies. And that might not be something you want to hear. So I'm not everyone's cup of tea. And I'm okay with that because I'm looking for the individual organizations that are ready to make that leap and ready to bridge that gap. And if you're not, then you and I are not really speaking the same language.
Well, the purpose of doing a discovery process like that, where you're looking for maybe inefficiencies or gaps in whatever's going on, is for the benefit of the company, right? It's even if there is a tear down in the process, it's about building up. And sometimes you have to tear the sheetrock off the walls so that you can come up with something better, maybe some wallpaper. You know what I mean?
I like that plug.
Well, I mean,
yeah, that's good.
if the sheetrock's all messed up, it needs to come down. You need to have something else, right? Or if it's textured, it's not going to work with the wallpaper as well as if it's been taped, if it's been floated properly and it's prepared for it. So sometimes tear down's necessary. But when that's the mindset you're bringing to the table here, right? It's about let's analyze and then let's see what's wrong. We'll talk about what's wrong, and then we'll make sure that we can fill in those holes.
Right. And again, easier said than done, because when you start telling an organization about their deficiencies, not everyone's ready to listen, even though they went in with that intention, because it costs money to make those changes up front. And so everyone's worried about their P&L and what that bottom line says, but they don't see the advantages of making those changes today over the course of 5 years, 2 years, the next 6 months, right? And so, again, going back to that workforce that's kind of leaving, and retiring, and you got this new workforce coming in, it's best to be on the front end of that bandwagon, right? So making the change now, I think, is pivotal for organizations.
And that's a conversation I have on almost a daily basis with business owners. It's what are you doing to work on your business, not in your business. And we get so caught up in the right now. But as business owners, as entrepreneurs, that's not the job. The job is to be looking 5-10 years down the line and be asking ourselves, how is the market changing? How do I need to pivot? How do I need to shift? And having the hard conversations about what am I doing wrong so that I can fix it and leverage my time and energy to my staff so that I can focus on 5-10 years.
Right.
It's easier said than done.
Absolutely.
Like you're saying.
And like you, as you asked me, what are the benefits? There are several layers to what a staffing organization, a true partner, could do for, a prospective client. Right. Number one is we mitigate risk. So I manage all workers' comp and payroll. I float payroll, so I'm kind of like a bank also, right? Because I'm loaning you, this payroll for the next 2 to 3 weeks at a time, and so it really allows for a cash flow to be freed up. For the right organization, that could be crucial. And then in addition to that, we work as an extension of an HR function, right? So we're a resource, we're a value add, where we will do the dirty work and dive into any laws that may be changing around employment, and then get that back over to you and get you ahead of the curve so that you don't fall, to victim to a change that you didn't see coming, right? But we also work as an extension of your recruitment team, right? Not a lot of organizations have the funding power to bring in a staff strictly to recruit for their next open role. So my team is doing that all day long. And if we do it correctly based on the standards and guidelines that our client gives us, then I'm able to really build a client profile and put 2-3 recruiters on open orders for my client, get those orders filled, and have them generating cash flow from those orders being filled, right? With the right individual. And that's the important part. A lot of agencies out there, they run their business like a mill because they're just looking for that bottom line, where we're a little bit more methodical in our approach. We're going to take our time. And I always tell my prospective clients, I say, listen, I'm like that new school technology mixed with the old school customer service and feel, right? I'm going to be in your business. I'm going to be in your business. We're going to make changes. We're going to adjust. And so as long as you're open to that, then I'm the right fit in this space, right? And so,
awesome. Yeah. Well, Nef, if folks want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Well, you can reach out to me. I'll give you my direct cell phone number here. I don't even know if that's a safe thing to do. Yeah, well,
you can always
I've had
just
it for
give your
years.
website or what's your office number.
Yeah.
That's typically what I'll do. Like me, I always give my office number out.
Well, I'll give my cell phone number out because it's easier to reach me there, and I have no problem answering calls that come my way. You can reach me at 562-774-5745. I know it's a California number. I am a transplant here in San Antonio, guys. But I've been here for close to, 9 months now. My office has been open for a little bit over a year. My family and I transplanted here when I just wanted to get my hands a little bit more around our operation. So I've been here for about 9 months now. And you can also reach me via email, nef.torres@peopleFirstEmployment.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Nef. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
We went from talking staffing to talking just leadership. Heads up, business owners. That's where it is, right?